This is the divine feminine, that term, which of course every time I hear it, I slightly cringe because it's overused. So this is my kind of punk rock version of what I think that is, which is it's a multi-dimensional femme consciousness that's moving through planet Earth and all of its inhabitants. And if we so choose, it will awaken us to the next vibrational frequency. My favorite thing is to actually work with someone who wants to change, and they actually do the work, and then they actually reap the benefits. Hi, Reality Riffing. I got the great privilege and pleasure to sit down with Harville Hendrix and Helen LaKelly Hunt. You know them most likely with their best-selling book, Getting the Love That You Want. And if you haven't read it, you need to read it. This is a profound and really a foundational book to having a beautiful and productive and creative and harmonious relationship. They have been doing this work for more than 40 years. They've been married for that whole time. And really, as you can see in the interview, they're doing the work constantly. It's really an inspiration of how to make your life and your relationships art and really practice. And so during the interview, I was very touched to see Harville and Helen practicing what they preach. And they're masters. They've spent these 40 years teaching all over the world. They've been on Oprah 17 or 18 times. They have 4 million copies sold of their 10 books. And we get to drink of the well of their deep wisdom. Hope you enjoy. Hi there, Reality Riffing and Immense Grace. I am so honored to be here with the great Harville Hendrix and Helen LaKelly Hunt, authors of a book that has changed my life, and I'm sure many of yours, Getting the Love You Want, a guide for couples. They're the co-creators of Imago Relationship Therapy, co-founders of Imago Relationship International, and going on their 39th year of marriage. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
We are honored to be here, and thank you for inviting us.
I just want to personally say that your work has completely changed my life and just how I show up as a partner in all relationship, not just romantic relationship. But I would love to just kind of start. I know you tell your story a lot, but maybe just getting a little taste of how you started to create what is now a legacy of work.
Okay, so the background, I think we started on this, and Helen, you can embellish this or redirect it. I think we started on this journey in probably our first date.
Oh, yeah.
That we met accidentally. I went to a party I didn't want to go to support another guy who wanted to go because there were going to be several women there, and
Well, it was an accident for you
accident for me.
that we met, but I heard you were in the room next door, and I wanted to go over and talk to you.
Yes.
So I intentionally got up off my chair, walked over, because someone said Harville Hendrix is in the next room. I went, oh.
Yeah. And she knew about me because she had been in a huge class at the university where I was teaching, but the class had two doors, and it was a large, like 60 or 70 people. So she always came in the back door and told me later why I had never seen her, that she sat on the back row, and as soon as the class was over, she always left. So I didn't know she was in the class and went to this party, and she came up and spoke to me. She knew me, I didn't know her.
But
told me who she was.
I had turned in a paper at the end of the class,
Yeah.
but I never met him. And then when I introduced myself, he said, oh, I kept your paper.
Yeah, I remembered her name, even though I hadn't met her. which is really unusual. How would I remember the name of a person I'd never met? And it's because she wrote the best paper in the class. And I always keep the best paper and file it. And the best paper has to be one where this is the way I did it. This is many now, like 45 years ago. Um, it had to teach me something as a professor rather than just regurgitate everything that was in the book. Somebody had to do thinking and teach me something. And I was so struck by her creativity that I kept the paper. And so I went to my office the next day to just confirm that. And there it was. Helen had made an A+ paper, and it was really startling. So I called her and said, I do have the paper. And we started talking, and we set up a date. And
And why did we just mention eventually I proposed?
yeah,
We just fast tracked.
I mean, it took a while
yeah,
because I was really in awe. Well, my first divorce, I had married a businessman had tried to marry me and push me into getting married, and I didn't know how to say no. And I didn't want to be married to a business person. I wanted a thought partner for
yeah.
things in my life. So that marriage didn't work.
And you also decided you were going to
so
propose to your
so
next
I was scared
husband.
of getting talked in, someone talking me into it, like
Yeah.
that first guy. By the way, he did something illegal and
Yeah,
had to
what-
leave the country. So then you also were divorced.
Yeah.
And so we started dating.
Yeah. And started talking about how come we're divorced. I mean, I'm a university professor, with already, had all my credentials.
Who
and
would divorce him?
who would divorce him? I
He's
mean,
so great.
I'm a good-looking guy, and I'm a university professor, and I'm single.
And who would divorce me?
And who would divorce
Well,
her?
I-
She's a very well-known person in Dallas, and blah 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 blah. So we got interested in that, and we then got interested in, well, how come? Why do couples fight? I mean, they divorce obviously because they fight. Why do they fight? And we began to talk about why do couples fight. That led to that becoming a research question, and started a book. And Helen and I got married, and after the book got started, I moved to New York, where she was living, and she helped collate. What is it? Not collate, but what is it? Bring together a lot of the people, writers,
I was a lot of the behind the
publisher
scenes
behind the
support
scenes.
about it getting
And
finished.
so the book emerged out of how do we answer the question? We need to write a book on why do couples fight, and then why does anybody fight? And that produced Getting the Love You Want, and that got landed in Oprah's office about 3 weeks after it came out, and Oprah called, and the rest is history. We went on her show 17 times, and so our audience went to about 20 million in the first 2 months or 3 months of the book being published.
He wanted my name on the cover, and I had a more well-known name, and his name was less known. And I said, Harville, it should just be your name.
I wonder, has my name ever gotten now as famous as yours?
Just your name, no one else. And so Oprah had him on the show.
Well,
so
I
many
think it's a
times.
good
That was
thing.
fine.
The Hunts in Dallas are still well known all over the world. But I guess I'm finally matching her reputation. And then her reputation, of course, working with Imago is now she has a double one as a famous family name and then as a famous author. So, anyway, yes, so that's sort of how we all got started.
So, obviously you're going through life cycles and all of the changes that a lifetime brings. And what do you feel has been maybe the most important thing that you created and then applied to your own relationship to have this long of a successful working and romantic relationship?
Oh, that's a really great question. And I think it's very apropos of us because of the story of our struggle in this relationship. So you might want to tell that story and what we discovered that actually got us through the crisis.
Well,
Or unless you have
yes.
another answer to your question.
Yeah, I do have one.
So you could go to the short answer or to the long answer.
I was thinking of going to a short answer
short
that
answer.
it's the end,
Okay.
which is particularly relevant to her work.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll say one word about what Harville does so in such an awesome way is he has a very succinct theory on what two people can do to transform their relationship. And then what I have contributed to that theory that I think is, and a lot of that was done in dialogue.
Yeah.
But he
Well,
sort
all
of
of it.
he's
All of it in
all
dialogue.
of it, but he crystallizes and makes the complex simple.
Yeah.
I think a thing I added to this that's especially relevant for you and your audience was about 8 or 10 years ago, when I love my role in Harville's life of taking what he wants to do and tweaking it so that it's improved. And you know what? His wardrobe needed improving, and his parenting needed a little improving. And so I took on the job of being Harville's improver, and I'm good with technical assistance, and I wasn't even going to charge him. It was free advice, and it was the right thing to do. So this is who I was in Harville's life, and he was pretty miserable being married to me.
Well, say
And-
challenge to grow.
But he didn't. He shut down. He went, I do
but
not
instead
like
of
it.
growing, I shut
Anyway,
down,
it took me a while, but I finally realized what Harville wanted wasn't my wise advice, but to wonder about him and to ask him questions. And this is where this has put me in the Dalai Lama state a lot. And this would be my message to your audience. All of you all are on the way to the importance of living life in what the brain scientists call the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the place of not knowing, like the Dalai Lama state. And there's the left. So I'll say one more thing, and that may be the only thing I'll say on this thing, but brain science, it's really good for everyone to learn about neuroplasticity and the brain science. There's the left brain analytical knowing. There's the right brain hemisphere connect the dots, intuitive knowing. And between the two is a way to know where you don't know.
Right.
That is the fun state to live in a relationship.
Yeah. And so to take the pick up on that, what that means to move into that state is you have to be safe with your partner. You cannot go into that space if you're anxious. And so the question is, how do you get safe, or what triggers anxiety? And what we discovered, I think, that became sort of Helen came up with the thought that as she was working on all this, she came at it from the side of the brain sciences and said, because we went to therapy and that didn't work, but that we needed brain surgery. And that because we were doing things differently and we weren't accepting the fact that Helen is a right brain, I'm left brain, and neither one of us accepting that I on-ramp with thought, she on-ramps with feelings. I want her to on-ramp with thoughts, she wants me to on-ramp with feelings, and we had not yet evolved in our own consciousness to know that polarity is built into nature. So what we did do, though, that was transformational, and we think and became a core part of the theory, was to discover that zero negativity is non-negotiable in a thriving relationship. That safety is not negotiable. You have to have safety. You cannot feel safe and be safe if you're critical of each other, or negative with each other. So the pledge to, the agreement to, and the year or so of practice it takes to remove negativity from all interactions in the relationship, I think was probably the most core and fundamental thing. Because if you take out that toxin, the negativity, then all you have then is affirmation, adoration, empathy, caring, fun, and play. But if you run negativity into any of those, you lose all that. So I think that the fundamental thing is that negativity has to go, and then you have a chance to move into the prefrontal cortex, because otherwise your amygdala is going to run your life, because it deals with fear and with anxiety, and to do that. But when you move into the Om state, that then is possible because you left out all the neurochemicals that are generated by fear that is triggered by anxiety. I mean, triggered by negativity. And negativity triggers anxiety. Anxiety triggers neurochemicals that disturb you, and you can't go to the Om place with that. So is that a response to your question? It's a response. Is that what you were looking for?
Well, I think it's a very important piece for everyone listening to this now and in the future. I'd like to reiterate what you said in terms of it took a year to do the practices I would say probably like, and the very least, to do the practices that started to create a different pattern of relational energy, and as you say, in your words, take the toxin of the negativity out. I would, in the yogic sciences, we kind of talk about you have to focus on what is bountiful, beautiful, and what attracted you to this person to begin with, as a spiritual practice, because it is a spiritual practice. And my experience with intentional dialogue is that it's one of the most rigorous spiritual practices that I have ever done. Forget meditation. I mean, meditation's amazing and very rigorous, but intentional dialogue is one of the most spiritual practices I've ever done. Can you guys talk about that a little bit?
And what I was just going to say, I agree with you. And Helen, I think you may want to come to that. That I didn't start there. I started off as a couples therapist who was figuring out how to help couples connect. But it certainly has been clear that spiritual practices are practices, and you have to do them over and over and over again. And that this one is an interactive practice, which makes it even more complicated. And so I just wanted to say that you were getting ready to talk.
I think I want to respond to your saying that it took a year or so to get there. And I had two ahas. One day, as we had announced to our family that we were divorcing because therapy didn't work, and the last therapist called it the couple from hell. And so then we announced to the Imago, we pulled our kids together and said, therapy doesn't work on us, and we decided to divorce. And then we told the Imago therapist that.
Well, I think you should say one therapist fired us so that we were basically defined as untreatable.
Yeah, which we were, because we were smarter than all of them.
Yeah.
Meaning we resisted all help.
So we're too. I'm an arrogant person, so I used to be more arrogant.
I have never met a couple more difficult than we are. So in my 40 years of practice,
well, and which now, I mean, it was the worst experience of my life, which has turned out to be one of the most important positive experiences, because I can say to any couple, no one is hopeless. We gave up hope. We stopped. We threw up our hands and were ready to walk away. And we added a couple things, and we have the happiest marriage on the planet. So, so there's one thing you just said that, taking a while to get there. On one level, I did wake up and realize that, oh my goodness, Harville, your neural energy has been hijacked by your left brain hemisphere. Theory development, and you have to separate from what you're doing to look at the theory, big picture. And so when you separate it, you don't need to do it. And then I was so fused with everything. I was really right brain fused with the theory and not able to talk succinctly, be left brain. And so the first thing that did take a year or so was I went to Harville and said, maybe we don't need a divorce. Maybe we need brain surgery. He said, what? I said, well, I need to be more succinct and ask tiny little questions. I shouldn't flood you with words. I flood you with words.
I agree.
And I shouldn't do that. And then maybe you could move from left brain
and
being,
give you some more words.
and have a little empathy.
Yeah, a little empathy.
Yeah, on that side. Or
yeah.
so for a
Do
while
a
we
little
did that.
feeling thing.
But honestly, it was in one aha moment that after we had understood the left and right brain hemispheres needed changing, and we worked on that for a year or more, I had an aha moment, suddenly realizing that what I needed to do was not know. And I can tell you about that. It had to do with what they call a still face experiment at Harvard, a mother with a baby.
Called the still face. Have you ever seen that video?
It's
Electronic still face video. Yeah.
And
well, that's a brief and
you'd really enjoy it. But
Yeah,
basically, they tried to see how much emotions impact the life of a child, or are they DNA? Is that what grows them? Their genes, or is it their relationships? And so they put a mother in front of a 11-month-old baby, and they played, and they were resonant, and the baby was happy, and they asked the mother to have a still face, not angry, not leave the room, just still. And the baby tries to get the mom's attention, and the baby can't, because the mom has been instructed to have a still face, and the baby decompensates and starts screaming and yelling because it can't get the resonance from the parent. And then after a few minutes of the baby screaming, X number of seconds, the psychiatrist said, okay, now you can resonate with the baby. And the mother starts resonating, and the baby immediately is joyful again. So it's sort of how important looks in the eye are, tone of voice. And Harville shows that video regularly, and I love that video. And one day I woke up and I realized that I was the still face with Harville. I'm busy doing work for him. And he should appreciate me.
It's my fault.
I'll be, I double task, I multitask, and he'll get excited about something, and I go, yeah, that's okay, yeah. But I'm a still face.
Yeah.
Or he'll, anyway. I suddenly realized when Harville says something or wants something, I need to turn around and practice being present.
Yeah.
And not knowing, and this is what began to put me in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex of just wondering about him, and I love it's a spiritual practice.
Yeah, and the follow-up with that is that the experience. I've lost my train of thought. But the follow-up had again to do with the with the negativity. It's not enough to take the negativity out. It's essential, but not enough. And we finally figured out, why don't people get better when they stop being negative? And it's because negativity, Rick Hansen, who is in the field of interpersonal neurobiology, and is in your field as well, you probably know him, talks about the negativity bias, and all of interpersonal neurobiology says that the brain grew up in the savannas and the jungles, a million or so years ago. And if it were not suspicious about the twig cracking in the wilderness, or whoever or whatever was approaching it, if it was not suspicious, it would probably, they're our ancestors, we wouldn't be here. Because if you trust, you might be somebody else's dinner. And if you don't trust, meaning you have to develop basically paranoia about your social environment, then more than likely you'll survive. You can look, but start off with paranoia, but check and see, is there anything that looks okay. And if you don't get any danger signals from whatever's approaching, a tiger, a lion, a person, or whatever, then you can approach, but you never just approach. So, so the brain developed negativity or paranoia as a defense system. And if you take it away and say, well, you can't use that defense system anymore and be close in a relationship, which is true, then you have to give the brain something else to do, because the brain is an active agent. And when it doesn't know what to do, then it goes into almost a circle, a spiral of confusion, and you feel terrible, and you just don't know what to do. So what we figured out was give it something to do, which is what Helen's talking about. Connecting behaviors, resonate with your partner. Say, if your partner says, oh, look at that bird, you say, well, yeah, look at that bird. In other words, it's a getting on their wavelengths. Or give them affirmations. Hey, I really like the answer you just gave here. You were so articulate. Or thank you very much for I like the answer you just gave.
Thank you for noting
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you're a very intelligent and fun partner in an interview like this.
Yeah, you're doing good also.
Yeah, thank you. So when you begin to say, do this, which is a connecting behavior,
it creates an energy field.
Then she feels safe. My brain now knows what to do. She feels safe. I feel safe because she feels safe. And we create this energy field. And Helen has labeled this energy field the space between, taking it from Martin Buber's The I-Thou Relationship, the hyphen. Martin Buber says, I remember one time hearing that, I've been around a long time, so I heard him lecture in New York back in the, it was in the 50s, 60s, I think. And he was misunderstood. People said focused on the I or the you. And it was because everybody's focusing on the self. So it was either the I self or the you self. He says, nein, it's das hyphen, nicht das ein, nicht das thou, it's das hyphen. He meant it's the relationship, it's the between space. That's what he was focusing on. It's not the I or the thou, it's the space between. So we picked that up, and Helen has elaborated that, and then we discovered, by George, that space between can be rooted in the quantum field as a real space. It's not a psychological space, although it is a psychological space, but the psychology is rooted in ontology. That is, energy is being. And so energy is here, and we are moving back and forth. Our energy field is causing each other's energy field to respond. And what we put in this connection here determines what she experiences and what I experience. So you have to then put stuff in the space between or take stuff out. Bad stuff out, good stuff in. And that creates subjectivity. Just like we remove the source of the building of the inner world from internal building to interactive building. And then we've been following the quantum conversation. And the other day, we've been using the word interaction for a couple of years without any real verification that we could say. I can quote a quantum physicist who says that reality is fundamentally interaction. It's neither the particle nor the wave, but the interaction. So that, and this quantum physicist said in the book I just finished reading last week, so Helen, I have a quote, I have a footnote, that the guy said we will ultimately have to say, when we look at all of the theories of the quantum field, that reality boils down to interaction. And everything flows out of that. Well, we've been in the Western world working on the self, which quantum physicists would call the particle, but we've not been working on the wave, which they would say, but it's neither the particle nor the wave. It's the interaction between those polarities. That reality is the interaction, not either side of the polarity. Now, that may not be of interesting to anybody listening, and it's a little heady, but what it means is that the energy that we direct toward each other determines how we feel inside. That builds memories, And those memories become our inner world. And then we look out back at the world through those memories. So it's like we've begun to say to couples, if you want to determine and you are responsible for the way your partner looks at you, and they will look at you through the last memory they had of you. So
Hmm.
you can decide, how do you want them to look at you? Well, build the memory through which you want them to see you. Well, if I say to Helen, you know what, I am really fortunate and blessed that I'm in your life and that you're so smart and so articulate. And I appreciate the support that I've gotten from you all these years and your love. And what can I do for you? Now she's going to go away with, next time I see him, I'm going to have a good thought. But if I say, Helen, that was not right. I don't know why you said that. Where did that come from? Next time she sees me, she's going to expect me to pick up on that energy. It's not that she's doing it. Her brain cannot do otherwise. Now, she might notice, like an observing ego, oh, next time I see Harville, unless I work on this, I'm going to assume he's going to be negative. And then she might change her interaction. But most of us don't have an observing ego, or we don't operate out of it. We just operate out of whatever stimulus is coming to produce the next response. So anyway, that's sort of how things that relationships are rooted in quantum field.
I love it. This is right up my alley, and very. I mean, I think it's a very exciting time just to have some of this come, more understanding in the science world of things that we know as relational scientists, as what I would call you guys, and other types of scientists. I call myself a yogic scientist.
Yeah.
But my question to you around, I think this is fascinating, Helen, around the still face phenomenon because of what we're dealing with now with technology. I just got like a total, what I'm constantly on my phone. I run 7 companies, and I just got a total flash of the still face that I'm, bringing to my relationship when I'm on my phones. And I'm curious what you have grokked, what you're teaching, and how that's kind of evolved with this massive technological influence on relationship.
But that's exactly what I was doing. And and so mainly we tell people my confession, we'd be driving down the car, and he's driving, and I'm setting up a hugely important appointment for us to do blah blah blah, where Harville's gonna da da da, and he's gonna be so happy about it. And he goes, Helen, there's a 57 Chevy going the other way.
I like
Wow.
old cars.
Or I go, yeah, Harville. Yeah. And or a Mercedes, 39 Mercedes, or something like that. And look, honestly, it's a car, and it's an old car.
Yeah.
So I don't need to look.
Yeah.
Or a building that's being constructed, they added another floor. And he goes, Helen, look, there were 5, there's now 6 floors. Wow, look at that, look at that. Well, he doesn't
And how
say
do they
that.
build those
He doesn't
floors?
say that much to me, but he's suddenly talking to me.
Yeah.
But that's not important. The meeting is important. And that's when I just suddenly got it one day that I am the still face with him, and I'm going to stop it.
Yeah.
And if he gets excited, I don't care about the car. If he's excited, I put my phone down. I go, wow, look at that. Look at the wheels. Look at I've not seen never wheels like that before. I don't care. If my partner's excited, I'm excited. And because a relationship is longing to have someone who's resonant with them. And I just realized how unintendedly I had acted in a way where Harville probably felt alone.
Yeah.
Or ignored.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that was up to me. And I could change it. So from that moment, that one moment, I have really worked at trying to be different.
And so another thing this is such a serious question because um, technology of connecting, not face to face, began long ago before cell phones, and with the telephone itself was the first time you could talk to somebody and not see them. But it's just grown to the point that it's now everybody's walking around looking at this thing, and you didn't walk
This
around with your
thing.
phone because long ago, because you had to have a big thing and you had to have a telephone network and all that. But the thing that's so it's here, and the question is going to be around, not going to go away, because technology is not going to go away. We grow more rather than less technology, and that for some reason seems to be the human. The creativity is the fundamental human feature. Is how many more things? More things can we do with that? And how many more things can we build? And we're going to do that until we're gone. But I don't know if it was Sue Johnson or John Gottman. But I think John Gottman borrowed it from Sue Johnson, but it doesn't matter. The phrase they both use is a bid for connection.
It was Sue.
It was Sue. And that high functioning couples, but you could also say high functioning parents and high functioning friends, are aware of and respond to bids for connection. So, and the bid could be that I walk in the room and Helen's on the phone. I'm bidding for connection. That Helen would say to the person on the phone, "Hey, Harville just walked into the room. I need to check with him, see what he wants. I may not need her to hang up, or she might say, 'Hey, I'll hang up and call you back.'" But there's a bid for connection, and the way you respond to that bid determines the quality of the connection. So I can do a bid for connection and then say, "I don't need to talk to you now." That's that's as good as Helen putting down the phone and talking to me. But we shouldn't have a what is it? A disresonance in the interaction. There has to be resonance. And so that's one way, is that the couples can have an agreement that what will we do when the other one wants to talk and you're occupied.
Do you want to tell her about making an appointment? Are you available?
Yeah.
To connect
So
now?
that's what we do is, and since you're bringing that up, why don't you do it?
Well, a big part of the dialogue tools, there's a Imago dialogue and a safe conversation dialogue. It's the same thing. One is in the therapy office and one is outside the therapy office. But the dialogue tools, before you do a dialogue, you say, "So and so, I want to talk with you about blank, blank, blank. Is this a good time?" And the other person can say, "Sure, I'm available now," or I'm doing something on my phone now. How is 30 minutes? Or how is an hour? Or how's about 5 o'clock today? And set up an appointment. I love how Harville says, this is about boundaries. If you're with someone, if it's a partner at home or at work, this respects other people's boundaries as you're trying to make a bid. Like, because Sue doesn't talk about making an appointment.
No.
But the important thing is when one person is trying to connect, the other does need to connect. But in Safe Conversations, we make it where let's do it at a time where I can focus on you 100% and I won't be distracted. Then I'm totally available for you. And it's fine to defer it, as long as then you show up when you say you're going to show up.
And this is really important. When you say, "I can't talk now, but I can talk in 30 minutes," that I don't have to come back in 30 minutes and say, "Are you available now?" Helen comes to find me at the end of 30 minutes and says, "Now I'm available." In other words, she responds to my request. But couples have to become aware enough and conscious enough and willing to commit to structure. And people really fuss at us about all of our structure and rules. And we say back to them, you cannot do anything without structure.
Like meditation.
That's in the quantum field. The field has to have form in order to manifest itself. So if you want to play tennis, you gotta hold that tennis just right. And you can't just wave the tennis racket around because you like to be spontaneous and wave it through the air unless you don't want to play tennis. And
Right.
you just like to wave the racket. But if you want the ball to go just over the net, so it's hard to be returned, you have to train that muscle right there. And until that muscle is trained and integrated into your brain, so that you automatically hold the racket this way. So we teach couples that you have to go through a training period. You can't just be spontaneous. Sorry, feelings are important, but not more important than structure. Because sometimes feelings are expressed without structure, they then become destructive. So structure is essential. And but the point of being present to the other person, I think, is the philosophy. And you can do that. We find you can do that on Zoom.
Yeah.
We can use this thing. I was amazed as we now do couples workshops online, and couples get more out. I hate to say this, they get more out of the online workshops because they can see each other than they got out of. I mean, the evaluations are as good or better than all the face-to-face, in-person things we did before COVID. The evaluations there were good, but there's no decrease of impact by this, and that's because of the way we use this. You can put people in Zoom rooms and they can talk to each other. You cannot do that in a big room with 100 couples. How are you gonna pair them up? The noise alone would not be possible. But it's just that there are ways to increase connection through technology, and it's going to be here. So we have to get creative about how we can amplify connecting rather than negate it. And all the dangers are here that people say. You become narcissistic, isolated, and alone. You don't know how to talk when you do meet somebody. Yes, all that's going on. So we need to have, I think, a massive education project about how to use technology to deepen your connection. And that will change the conversation.
I love it because I agree with you. I think technology, there's such it's a polarity. There's so much you can do with it that does actually increase connectivity. It
Yes.
isn't just the other side of it. But when we're working in, I mean, I'm curious your work with the millennial generations and some of these younger generations, because I find that these truths are everlasting. And I think that Imago really holds these kind of fundamental truths of relationship. But I'm curious, have you noticed differences in these younger people who grew up with an iPhone in their hands or grew up with in this technological age on social media, how the relational kind of field is different, or do you feel like it's exactly the same no matter what kind of generation you're working with?
Well, I think that question comes up a lot, and so I've had to think about it. And I'd love to hear your thought about it, Helen, because I don't think we've spent much time privately talking about it. But I think what you said about the universality of the connecting process and the technology of that through the dialogue process, it is universal. And that, and we say that because we're also in 61 countries now. And nobody in those countries is saying we have to have another way to work. They're all saying it's the dialogue process that works in all these countries. And it may be modified a little bit, like in some countries, making eye contact is taboo or forbidden, or something, or and in other countries, taking a deep breath and waiting, somehow that's too ritualistic. But the structure of the dialogue itself, which is asking for an appointment, getting mirrored back, being asked, is there more about that instead of are you done yet? Uh, Summarizing, let me see if I got all of that. That structure forces the engagement. And in the process of forcing the engagement through, I get to know who Helen is by the fact that I mirror her. So I'm differentiating from her while I'm increasing my connection to her. And the two go hand in hand. You can't connect with somebody from whom you're not differentiated. Otherwise, you are connecting, you think, but with your image of them. And that's not a true connection. That's a fantasy connection. I can only connect with the Helen that is really real, who reveals herself as she talks, and I get it when I mirror. And that means I have to mirror. I can't just blah, 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 blah. So you said so and so, waiting for my turn. That's not mirroring. That's competition. And the dialogue process ends competition and replaces it with connecting, which is what we want. And this is the thing I think about technology is one of the things that occurred to me one day is the obsession with the cell phone and with all of the social media connecting points, Facebook and all that, is because people want connection.
Right.
And it's they don't quite know there is another layer to that, which is more personal than just hearing. This is why a text is very different from a Zoom call. I know the other day my daughter Leah called me on the phone, and she'd been calling me with FaceTime, and it was on the phone, and I said, "How come I'm not seeing you?" She says, "Oh," hung up, called me back on FaceTime. Then we had a good time, but just hearing a voice. So that is, and I think we will increase this capacity to personalize technology, just FaceTime itself, and then the force to go in it with Zoom. That we're learning so much about that. So the connecting is the universal human need, and we're going to do a false form of connection, an inefficient form of connection. If we can't get the real thing, we'll take a substitute because we want to connect, even if it's a fantasy connection. And someday, we are hope that we'll actually meet another human being and feel that oscillating energy flow back and forth, which is, we think, the life force. And you feel alive and joyful. And you can't feel alive and joyful unless you're resonating with another human being.
Yeah.
We think, at least that's our biased opinion.
And I have experienced this, but maybe it's kind of outside the stricter rules of the intentional dialogue, but I use intentional dialogue with, anyone, even, and I think for single people, like, this is a really powerful thing to use on dates.
Yes.
It's,
Oh.
It's the Walmart checkout person, just anywhere. It really is good brain training that takes you to the healthy part of your brain. If you aren't up here, you may be ruminating about something you're frustrated about. But using it again, when you're filling your car with gas and someone walks by, and just the cortical structure of your brain, this will be my last comment, releases dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And these are healthy neurochemicals that the Mayo Clinic, there's a women division there that came up with all this research. When these neurochemicals are released from your brain and flow through your bloodstream, you live longer and you don't get sick as much, and you have a stronger immune system to fight off COVID. As opposed to if you're upset about something and ruminating about it, or speaking rudely to someone else, worse even, cortisol, adrenaline, and these are neurochemicals that are anxious, they of anxiety or frustration or anger. And when those are flowing through your bloodstream, when those get released and they flow through your bloodstream, you get sick more. And you might, so for all the right reasons, there's so many reasons to practice looking for the best in a moment. Finding a moment to just greet someone kindly. And it's good for the other person, and it's good for you.
And I want to give you a couple of quick stories, because I know we're running out, about using dialogue with anybody. across the street, there's
Is
a
this the one
hotel.
you told me
Yeah,
yesterday? You told
across
me
the street,
about this yesterday.
there's a hotel, and I went over to have breakfast with a new person that's come onto our team. And so we're in this hotel dining room, and a guy comes up to us. He's kind of a actually well-built, husky guy, and he came. Clearly, he was unhappy and didn't want to be at work, and came up and handed us our menu and didn't even say good morning.
This
And
was a week ago.
but then he said, "Well, the specials of the day are so and so and so and so and so of the morning." And I said, let me see if I'm getting this. So the special of the day is blah, 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 blah. Did I get that? And he said, yeah. I said, well, thank you for being so clear about it, because I seldom ever know what I want. And when I hear an option which is not on the menu, I get excited about having new different kinds of food. And you said that with such a kind tone of voice, and I just appreciate that. I want that special. So a week, and then I thanked him for that. Uh, then he brought us a cup of coffee without being asked. He said, "Oh, I'm assuming you like some coffee." And he brought the coffee. So a week later, we go back to the same restaurant,
Which
same
was
booth, same person,
yesterday.
and the guy comes in and walks to our table with the menu, with the water, and with a cup of coffee. Says, "I remember you from last week,
And a smile.
and I knew you like coffee. And you wanted a special sweetener, I think, Mr. Hendrix."
Mm.
And I said, "Yes. Do you have it?" He said, "Was it stevia?" And we don't have stevia, but we have truvia. So he suddenly became, my friend as a result of giving him an affirmation. And
Yeah,
I told
the
this
look in
new
your
staff,
eye.
member who was sitting, I said, now, because this is about Safe Conversation, he's signing on to help us with this business to deliver Safe Conversation to the planet. I said, I just want you to know, if we could train the planet to do what I just did with this guy, it would end war on the planet.
Yes.
And so you do it with everybody.
Yeah.
And waiters and so forth. And then Leah was talking to me about, well, she was out to dinner with this person, and he seemed to kind of blah, 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 and seemed a little bit put off or something. And she said, I just don't think, we're going to make it, because he's just not very talkative. And so I said, well, tell me how the conversation went. Well, when he finished talking, she started talking. So I said, okay, next week when you all go out, or tomorrow, whenever you're going to go, when he talks, mirror him back. You know what we mean by that. You've been around us for all these years. And she said, oh, damn it, I hate to do that.
This is your daughter.
So then she does, and he becomes talkative and warm and expressive, because it's the resonance. She saw him, and now he feels seen, so he can be vulnerable. And she called me back the next day, and she said, what can I say? I don't like doing what my parents tell me to do. but I like this guy. He was warm and expressive. So she's integrated those technologies into her dating.
And
And this conflict with guys that she always had about 8 or 10 dates and it was over is not happening anymore. And it was her who was ending it by not connecting with the guy, but thinking he was not connecting with her. And they didn't have any skills to say, hey, now thank you, I'm glad you told me about this. Could I tell you about me? Most guys don't do that. So anyway, I see that we're at the end. Do you have a last thing you want to say or for us to do?
I just want to say that I think it's really important for people who are looking for partnership. This evokes the best out of someone, and
Yes.
a lot of people think, especially in our kind of casual dating app world, that it's just you find another one, you slide left, you slide right, or whatever it is, and that it's about finding someone who's so wonderful. But really, you can evoke that out of someone.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's the secret. You can evoke what you want. It's not sitting out there, and you go get what you evoke. And if you don't know you're evoking the distancing, then consciousness is a good thing to have. That whatever the input gets output. It's that mechanical.
This is, I mean, you obviously, this is just scratching the surface, but it's just such an incredible transmission from you both. And I want to thank you for all of the just.
Isn't she? And gorgeous, articulate, magnificent. Yes.
Takes one to know one, and we appreciate being with you.
Yeah, you are amazing yourself.
Do it.
Your questions were just perfect.
Thank you so much. And I do want to say for everyone, you have a book coming out in April. It's really, is it more for practitioners or can anyone pick it up?
Well, it's a guide for clinicians who want to do this work with couples, and we did our best to write it in as little technical language as possible, so anybody who could read a 500-page book on relationships could read it without the language being a put off. So yes, and it's available now from Amazon.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. It's such an honor, and bless you, and bless your holy union. And thank you. So good to meet you.
Thank you. We appreciate you and love being on with you. See you down the path.
See you down the path.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Reality Riffing. These are conversations that I think are important with people who are doing great things in the world about subject matters that need to be discussed. If you enjoyed the content, the conversation, please feel free to share with your people, share with your friends and family, rate the podcast below, and also subscribe.